Again, to our sponsors and partners, we appreciate your support. It's just the beginning. We hope we'll have a long journey together. Also, I want to thank as well to the great team we have behind. Um, Without you guys, we couldn't be able to be here today. From my standpoint, it's a great experience taking part of the Sportlab's new format. We truly believe we can help improving the Brazilian industry. Uh, Sorry, guys, I've been facing some problems here. Can you hear me, Josh?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm
Even
sorry,
better, I
guys.
can understand you because it's not in
Oh,
Portuguese.
yes,
Yes.
sorry.
No worries.
I had a problem with my iPad here.
No, it's good to see you, and you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying, I've been working in the industry for the last 20 years, especially with data consulting research. And it's a great honor to me to have you here, especially to feature the fluid fan, which we consider as a game changer in the industry. And I recommend our audience to pay attention, take notes, and right after your presentation, begin working with the fluid fan concept. You are more than welcome, and the screen is yours.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me, Rafael and Luis, and I appreciate you guys inviting Sports Innovation Lab to participate. I'm going to start with a little bit of a story so you understand who we are, and I'm going to get into the presentation as well. But the Sports Innovation Lab began when my partner, Angela Ruggiero, who's a four-time Olympian in the sport of ice hockey, she and I began to talk about what was changing in global sports. She was on the executive committee of the IOC. She was participating in bringing the Olympics to the United States as the chief strategy officer of Los Angeles. And she said to me, you know, Josh, your background in research is really helpful because the entire sports industry is looking toward the future without a lot of data to guide it. And I said to her, well, that's ridiculous because a lot of industries use data to understand future trends, get better insights about their consumers, and most importantly, make decisions about what technology to buy. And we dove into the opportunity to figure out how to shape this industry back in 2016, thinking about the future of sports and the future of fandom. And this concept of the fluid fan that I'm going to walk everybody through today began back in 2017 when we began to look at the entire sports industry around the world. A lot of my examples are North American focused because we have a lot of data in North America, but the trend of fluid fandom, what I'll walk you through today, is something we believe very strongly is applied to global fandom. And I think it is as appropriate for the Brazilian market, South America, Europe, around the world as it is in the US. And if I do my job, many of you will be convinced of that going forward. So to begin with, let me introduce the concept to you so you understand how we think about the fluid fan. It's a story that begins with local fandom. And when you look across the world, you'll notice that some markets are still in the state of local fandom, which means that a lot of regional rivalries exist, a lot of local clubs and teams are at the core of the society and of the community. That is a fandom that we all understand very well. Grandpa was one type of fan. He passes it on to his son. He passes it on to his daughter or her, his son. And that generational fandom sort of moves through the family. That's local fandom. And when telecommunications came about when they started putting satellites in space, and we could all start to enjoy watching Pele from anywhere in the world. We started to have what's called global fandom. And that meant that we could watch the Olympics without going to the Olympics. We could watch the Olympics live. We could watch numerous events at the Olympics or the World Cup or the Grand Prix or the Super Bowl. These big mega events became telecast across the world. And so we became global fans. And we could begin to see and access sports that we never knew existed before. That was the advent of technology that made, English Premier League soccer available to consumers in the United States. It made the Olympics possible for people to watch and, participate in no matter where they were in the world. And what we believe is we're moving from local fandom to global fandom to now the future of fandom, which is what we call the fluid fan, where those regional and geographic and generational fandoms are evolving to be more about experiences and more about the consumer's personal choices than it is about those generational and regional biases and preferences. And this chart really walks you through how we believe that time zone, that transition is occurring, where you would walk, listen to the radio, be very local, to global, where now you have these OTT and cable and satellite systems, to the age of the future that we're entering now. And to be very specific, we believe you're entering the age of the fluid fan today, which is 2020 is when the fluid fan is here. And this consumer changes their allegiances very, very often. They can follow athletes instead of teams. They can watch on different types of media. So sometimes they watch on television, sometimes they watch on mobile, sometimes they watch on a subscription pay-per-view channel, sometimes they watch on social media. The fluid fan doesn't care where they're getting their sports. They want it the way they want it. And you all know this about the modern consumer. They want personalized experiences. Well, they also want personalized sports. And the fluid fan is open to change, meaning they don't need to see things the old-fashioned way. They're empowered to choose, which means they will decide how they want to watch it on their phone, on their tablet, on their TV, on the big screen, at the bar, and they're continuously evolving. And this drives everybody in the industry crazy. You're going to hear from Budweiser later, and you're going to think about how marketers try to reach consumers. The idea that once you figure out that they're on TikTok, a new platform comes out. Once you figure out how to use those clever Snapchat filters to engage, people who love football, the next big thing comes onto Instagram. So we're not just talking about digital media, we're talking about the fact that fans change because technology outside of sports is changing their behavior, right? When they go home and they talk to the speaker and they ask for music to play and they don't touch anything, they're changing their behavior. The consumer is changing because of technology. Now, if they think they can talk to a speaker and request a song, why don't they think they can talk to a speaker and find out who the greatest goalkeeper of all time was? They expect the technology to keep up with their expectations. And that's what fluid fans demand. And so that changes the way that you market. And a big piece of this presentation is really around helping you get your mind into a future state where you stop doing things the old-fashioned way. And one of the things this industry does, which is pretty antiquated, is very old-fashioned in its approach, is it looks at what is called a CRM system, a customer relationship management system, a system that takes a lot of email information, a lot of ticketing purchasing information, and it tries to create audiences out of what are called demographics. And for those of you who aren't in marketing, it's really just taking the information about the profile of the consumer and trying to create some sort of assumptions about what they'll do. And those assumptions in the age of the fluid fan tend to be wrong. We tend to think women don't want certain things, that young people do certain things, that older people aren't doing what the younger generation's doing. We're looking through a lens of demographics and gender bias that sometimes colors the way that we talk to our consumers when that's not really what's happening. The fan is changing and they have new behaviors that they're doing. So you can't look at them the old-fashioned way. So we talk to our clients a lot about embracing the concept of fluidity and not being so fixated on demographics and audience segmentations that are built off of demographic data. Instead, we say focus on fan behavior. And that shift, if you don't remember anything else I say, remember that. Remember that demographics are limited in their view, but behaviors help you to design and optimize for fan engagement. The entire industry, and I'm sure Brazil is no different, says we want our fans to be engaged. Well, whether you say we want our fans to be engaged in English or in Portuguese, it still doesn't mean anything, because engagement means everything, so it means nothing. What do you want your fan to do is the question. And when you do that hard exercise of trying to think about what is the behavior I want my fan to do, you're going to make the right decisions about what content to create, what technology to invest in, and what marketing campaigns to run, because you'll understand exactly what you want that consumer to do. And for most of the organizations that we work with, and our clients are some of the largest properties in the world. We work with DraftKings, we work with the NHL, we work with the NFL, we work with the IOC. Working with these groups, getting them to think about this is really challenging, because they think of fan engagement in broad terms. And what this requires you to do is to specifically focus on which fan behaviors drive revenue for your organization. Are you an organization that makes more money when they're watching? Are you an organization that makes more money when they're betting? Are you an organization that makes more money when they're eating, right? When they're going, when they're playing? These things are how the industry is shaped from a revenue model perspective. Every sports business makes money selling merchandise, selling tickets, selling media rights, selling sponsorship. So understanding how these behaviors lead to optimizing those revenue streams is the concept behind not saying fan engagement and focusing on fluid fan behaviors. And we have plenty of evidence that this is happening. Remember, I told you at the beginning, my goal was to convince you that this is happening. Well, I can't expect to convince you unless I give you evidence that there's a convergence in these business models. So I'm going to walk you through what we point to as evidence that the fluid fan is here. And the first area that we look to is the area of what we call athlete-driven media. And athlete-driven media at its core is something I'm sure all of you understand very well. You used to only get access to athletes through the media that the broadcasters put on television before the game or after the game, and sometimes you got to talk to them a little bit at halftime, but it was always through the lens of the media company, always through the broadcaster's view. What's happening in this generation, the age of the fluid fan, is that the athletes are enabled to talk directly to the consumer. In English, we call this D2C, direct to consumer. And it means that you're taking the media company, you're taking the agents, you're taking the brands out of the equation, and we're going direct from talent to consumer. And when that happens, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Twitter, there is an opportunity for that athlete to generate a new business relationship with that consumer. They can sell their own nutrition plans. They can sell their own jerseys that aren't rights protected. They can sell their data from their wearable devices. There are all kinds of new business models that open up when you understand that the athletes are driving the consumer conversation, not just the media companies themselves. It's a very big and fundamental shift in the power structure of sports. The other evidence of convergence is venues. I'm sure, and I haven't had the opportunity to come to Brazil, but I hope that I get my invitation as soon as this disaster of a health crisis is over. I'm sure you have venues within Brazil that are starting to take shape the same way that we've seen global venues around the world evolve. They're going from the concept of being designed for the game and now being designed for multi-use. So they have retail in them. They have other entertainment in them. They have other restaurants, not just concessions, other restaurants around them. Sometimes they have office space in them. These venues are now growing into small cities. And they're not designed to just take a consumer's eyeball and put them on the pitch. They're designed to have the consumer come 365 days of the year and spend their money, whether they're in season, out of season, home or away. They're becoming entertainment districts. They're becoming retail districts. And these venues are Rafael, do you guys want me to jump right in or?
Yes, we are back.
Okay.
Josh, we are sorry. We had a problem. You saw it, of course. I renew my invitation. So be ready to jump in the first available flight to Brazil.
Perfect.
Spend a week with us, doing a branding show and featuring several of your trademarks. I have some questions, Josh, here. We are still on time. We had 12 minutes. So one of our attendees just asked, it would be my first question as well. He asks, what is the difficulty to sport properties understand how to work, how to track fan behavior and take advantage of it?
I'll speak from my experience with sports properties over the last 4 years. And what I've noticed more than anything else is that a lot of professionals that work in sports really love their jobs, right? It's a hard job to get. When you graduate from college, everybody says, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to work in sports. So you get a job at the entry level and then you stay there for as long as you possibly can. Unfortunately, that gives you a very limited experience on how businesses operate outside of sports. And I think one of the things that the sports industry does very badly is recruit from other industries, is to bring in talent from the entertainment market, right? Music, film, whatever. It doesn't really lend very well to bringing people in from the agencies, the marketing agencies. Even though sports teams and properties look sexy and fast-paced on the outside, agency people come in and they get very bored very quickly, or they don't want to work at a sports property because it's owned by a billionaire and they run it in a different way. So I think that's changing. But I think if you asked me what have we run into when we push on this idea of innovation, it's really that the structure of the organization, the skills that they have, and the experience that they've been exposed to is very limited in the sense that it understands sports and only sports.
Sounds perfect. I've been saying for 20 years, loving sports it's not enough to work in this industry, and it's something fascinating, but it's not enough. And I have one second question here for one of the most talented guys that I've seen in this industry now in Brazil. He's pretty young. He's working with technology and innovation, and he asked something that I've been trying to do myself is how can we get these people moving, get these people working towards a more professional way, like other industries. Of course, what we are doing here today is adding value to this question. But what else could we do to professionalize a industry such as the Brazilian one, developing country, and a sport industry that is not developed as the US one, for instance?
Well, I think the US, because it's more developed, has the responsibility to lead the way. So we push the largest leagues and properties in the world to start collecting data. I think people who work in sports are pretty confident people. They tend to be former athletes. And that confidence that, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can make decisions with my gut. I know what's going on, really doesn't lend itself well to collecting data and learning about things that are coming that you perhaps wouldn't see. I can't tell you how often people make the mistake of saying, oh, I know how things work because I see how it works over here, without looking at the full picture. And globalization is one of those things where if you don't have data, you don't understand how the Japanese sports fan is different than the Brazilian sports fan is different than the European sports fan. And while we believe very strongly in the concept of the fluid fan, fandom develops very differently based on society, culture, and family structure, and even just access to technology in general. So you need data. So I would answer this question very directly. You need data, and you need to start collecting data. And we don't think you should be collecting demographic data. This goes back to the presentation. We believe you should be collecting behavioral data. And to collect behavioral data, you actually need to change the way you do things. You need sensors, you need cameras, you need something that collects information without doing what the industry has really relied on for decades, which is asking fans questions with surveys. You gave a little bit of my bio, but I'm a professional market researcher and I do not trust surveys. I think if I ask you something, you'll tell me what you think I want to hear. But if I observe you doing something, then I'm learning what you're actually doing and I get a better sense of what's really motivating you. I believe the whole industry needs to get smarter about observing their clients and figuring out what it is that they really want.
Great, Josh, but let me step back a little bit. We are talking right now, for around 100 people. And I've been working with research as well in Brazil. We have a syndicated annual research, and I truly understand what you are saying, and I agree with you, but we cannot get rid of research forever. We have some insights from them. I understand that you're proposing a step ahead, something more sophisticated that technology allows us to do today. But I'm afraid when you say that, and I've heard here feedback that the translation is pretty well. So I'm thinking, sitting in their seat, say, hey, Josh is saying that research, let's get rid of that. We won't work with research anymore. But what I'm trying to say is, I see research as important as well. Still important for some monitoring ROI thing to put in a how can I say that virtual cycle. And just don't panic our audience, please.
No, I won't panic your audience. And if the translation is working well, then the translation is this. Right now, Netflix, Facebook, and I'm sure I'm missing very dominant players in the Brazilian market, but Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat are all collecting data. So my pushback, right, when I push back on that feedback is you're either going to buy data from those companies because they understand your customer better than you do, or those companies are going to take your customers' eyeballs and move them away from what you want them to watch. And that's the danger here. The danger here is that we don't really think about the fact that we have the opportunity as sports properties who fans love. They wear our shirts. They don't wear Netflix shirts around. They don't wear Facebook shirts around. They wear our shirts around. They wear our jerseys around. Why aren't we collecting more information from them? They want us to have it. They want us to make the sport better for them. Why aren't we doing that better? And don't think about the word research. I hate the word research. I would deny that I'm a researcher, but it helps, right?
Two. Take two, not only one. I'm as well. So thank you for your answer. It's perfect. Let me try to put in another way, now to panic the audience. What's Josh saying right now, guys, is if you don't make money from your fan, other people is going to do it.
That's absolutely
That's
right.
what he's saying. Okay. One other question, Josh. If we fail in educating the industry, following good examples would be the last way to change it?
So if we fail, what is the question? I'm sorry.
Following the best practice by watching it, it would be the last way to be more professional, to develop the industry under the fan behavior standpoint.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So is it if we fail to evolve the way we watch sports?
No, the way we can help them to be more professional.
Yeah. So, we always start with, and we come to the table with, what data do you know? What behaviors are important to your business? If we can get our clients thinking about that, then what we really do is we give them plenty of examples of what's working outside of sports. So I push my team very hard to look at what's happening with festivals, with concerts, with movie theaters, with places that are doing entertainment in new ways, to try to influence the way we think about the fan experience that happens live. For so many of the generation now, they watch everything on the highlights and the short form, and they wake up in the morning and they watch it, and without the 30-second commercials and the long form content. How are we taking advantage of that? And what are we doing that allows them to buy different things while they're watching than sitting back and watching a commercial? I think it's a lot of this is about e-commerce. A lot of this is about social betting. I think a lot of this is about buying pay-per-view, highlights and behind the scenes content. There's a lot of new business models that can emerge if you start paying attention to how consumers are changing their behavior.
Perfect. Josh, once again, thank you very much for being with us today, for your patience because of our problem, our apology.
It's okay. I blamed it on the snow that's falling in Vermont. So
yeah, maybe it's too warm down here.
Maybe it's too warm.
Maybe. So guys, a last message from Josh. Please, Josh, if you want to address in 1 minute our audience, what would be your very last message for them, please?
Well, I did mention at the very beginning that my partner is a former Olympian, 4-time Olympian. She worked on the IOC. We don't believe that this is just a business imperative. We believe this is a social imperative. We believe that the youth of today need to be as motivated to play, be active, stay competitive as the future, as the previous generations. So my goal is to motivate you to try harder, reach beyond sports for answers and motivation, and get our youth today even more excited about sports than perhaps we were growing up. And I really appreciate you guys inviting me to participate. I wish you a great conference. I wish I could understand most of it, but I will certainly look forward to getting the first flight to Brazil and taking you up on your offer to host me, Rafael.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you very much. We will be together in January, featuring the future of watching sport. I hope free of technical problems. Apologies. Once again, thank you very much, Josh.
Yes, be well, everybody. Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Sorry for the problems. Rafael Plastina, obrigado também. Pessoal, eu vou reforçar aqui o pedido de desculpa pelos nossos problemas técnicos. Eles acontecem, mas vamos em frente, tá? Eu vou chamar agora um intervalo de 5 minutos, depois a gente volta para o nosso segundo painel, que é um painel onde a gente vai ter o Gustavo Castro, diretor de marketing de Brahma, falando sobre o case de Brahma com o futebol. Tá? Mais uma vez, desculpa pelo problema, mas vamos em frente.